Hello, everyone, and welcome to the series of fireside chats by WomenTech Network. We are inviting phenomenal and outstanding women in tech to inspire and empower you to grow professionally. Last week, we spoke about imposter syndrome, limiting beliefs, and advocating for yourself with Melanie de Guzman, co-founder at Rogers Women in Tech. Today, we have a special guest. Her name is Rachana Kumar. She's Vice President of Engineering at Etsy. She's an award-winning and accomplished woman in tech driven by the intersection of technology, social impact, and leadership. She is a speaker, a mom, and a true inspiration for many people in tech. Hi, Rachana, and welcome.
Hi, Anna. Thank you for the very generous intro. I'm very excited to be here.
Super excited to have you with us. And everyone who is tuning in, feel free to ask your questions. And whenever you hear something that resonates with you, please do let us know. Rachana, you have been working in the nonprofit sector, started a social enterprise, and have grown into the role of VP of Engineering at Etsy, which is super impressive. I want to go back in time and discuss how you became actually interested in technology and what sparked your interest.
Yeah, thank you. I think, I went to engineering school for undergrad degree. That's where I learned a lot about computer science and technology in general. But I would say before that, I grew up in India, and while I was growing up there, I grew up also close to Bangalore. Bangalore is like the tech hub, like Silicon Valley equivalent in India. And while I was in high school, that's when also a lot of tech boom started happening in Bangalore. So I would say that it was a combination of few different things, given all the situation around me. It was not like I grew up with like computers from a young age or anything. It was expensive while I was growing up, and we just had computers in the school where I could go and use the computer once a week or something and play some games and learn some super basic things. But while I was finishing high school, I was debating whether to go into engineering or to do law or something else. And also, I would say like my generation in India was also the first generation to see like the benefits of globalization, opening up the economy when there were a lot of jobs, again, being created in Bangalore in tech space as well. So I had some interest in technology while growing up, but it's not like I grew up with a lot of gadgets or a computer at home. But I was really good at math and science, and I did well in my 12th grade. And people are like, you're really good at math and science, and tech is really booming, so maybe you should go to engineering school. And that's how I kind of landed in an engineering college. That's where I would say like most of the things I learned, mostly in terms of logical thinking, how does technology solve like larger problems, all those things I picked up while I was in engineering school. Anna, are you there?
Yes.
Sorry, I lost you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. My real interest in technology actually really peaked once I started working. I think the main reason for that is even in engineering school, there's a lot of like theoretically, this is how you can apply technology and solve problems. And I did do some internships and some practical projects there. But once I started working, I started with tech consulting and applying like technology to solve like real humans problems and seeing their reaction to it and improving their life, making it more efficient. I think what gave me the most joy about my job, and that's where once I started working is when I really was excited about like new technologies. How can I solve more problems? How can we do this at scale and things like that? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's about like solving also important problems, right?
Yeah.
And having this like kind of superpower to do that and being able to do that and being
Exactly.
fascinated, right? By the world of possibilities.
Yeah, I think you really nailed it in terms of superpower, because I didn't realize that till I started working. It's like, especially like even now, it's true. If you're good at like computer science or any other technology, it can be almost applied to any field. if used the right way, to improve people's
Right.
lives,
Right.
solve problems, almost any industry in any part of the world. So I truly think it's a superpower, like you said.
Right. So you need to know where you want to act, which problem you want to solve, and kind of start applying it. And it like basically coding or like in having different tech skills. It could be in different fields, right? Used.
Yeah, and
So
it can be used in any field. And I think also one of the stereotypes of people who are interested in technology is like you have to be like super geeky. You have to sit by yourself in some basement and be like a lone person coding away somewhere in the basement. And I don't think it's like that at all. Like I was a engineer programmer for a long time, and it's one of the most collaborative jobs. And especially, it's like any other job. It's a true team effort. Of course, you can be a sole genius building it in your basement as well, but eventually, it has to reach customers. If someone needs to start using it, you
yes.
need you need to do more research. You need to do some marketing to sell the product that you have built. And so it's true, like it's truly a team sport. And I think that's another part of the job. I was initially worried that is it I enjoy interacting with people and I'm an extroverted person, but it was a truly collaborative job, which I enjoyed a lot. And that's when I would say like I had a little bit of interest. It grew more in engineering, but I truly enjoyed like capabilities of technology because I had more access to it as well once I started working.
During your studies, were there like many women in tech studying with you, or like how was the situation?
Yeah. I think when I went to engineering school, it was at that given point in time very few women. Like in my class of I would say about 60, 70 students, it was like 7 or 8 women. I think the good news, at least, when I was looking, I went to RV College of Engineering in Bangalore. I was looking at like the numbers are substantially higher. I think it's around 30-40%. So there are a lot more girls entering engineering schools, which is very exciting. So, but even once I started working, once I came to US and started working in like software engineering, there were very few women on my team. Like it was predominantly, I would say, like it would be me and another person, very rarely another engineer. It could be a project manager or a designer or something like that who were female. It was this was I'm talking like 15 20 years ago, so it was predominantly all male.
Male, right, right. So what actually brought you to the US? You grew up in India, studied in India, right? And then you made a move to the US.
Yeah, so I, of course, as you already said, I grew up and I went to college there. And of course, it was like, as I said, I was in Bangalore. There were a lot of tech jobs and a lot of opportunities
Right.
as
A
well.
tech
But
hub, right.
it was a tech hub, so it was not certainly lack of opportunity. But my sister had moved to US like 3-4 years ago. I was like growing up very close to my sister, still very close to her, and I have a lot of family as well in the US, a lot of cousins and things like that. But my sister was here, and that's when she was like, maybe you should come too, and that's when I started looking for jobs in the US as well. And I thought it would be also, I think working in different countries in general, it doesn't have to be like US. I think US is like fantastic in terms of providing opportunities for people and truly, irrespective of who you are, where you came from, giving you the opportunity to be successful and thrive both in your career and life. Very few countries can offer that. But I've also worked in Cambodia, I worked in South Africa. I think it's like exploring a new culture, a different country. I think all of that is really exciting. But the main reason I came here was, my sister was here, and there was also a lot more different fields and opportunities as well. So all of that combined together seemed very exciting. And New York seemed so exciting. It's still exciting. When I was 20, I was like, oh yeah, of course, I want to go to New York. It's very exciting.
Right. Was there some difficulties finding a job, or was it like you just searched for a job, found a job, and just came to the US?
Yeah, so I came to the US in 2005, 2006. Around that time, the economy was also doing very good in the US. and the immigration was not as hard as it is now. Like there are two factors if you have to come as an immigrant, right? It's one is the economy good, and are there a lot of jobs where there is shortage for local talent, right? Like for people to hire other people from another country, there has to be a shortage. It's a supply and demand, like any basic of economics, like any other industry. So there were a lot of tech jobs then, and the economy was very good, and immigration was not as hard as it is now. So I started looking, and I got in touch with a few people, had a few referrals, and I found a job while I was in college in India, and then I came here after that. Yeah.
Right. I'm asking because like we have a huge community worldwide, and
Yeah.
one of our like one of the large communities also in India, and
Yeah.
I'm sure many of them look up to you, and
Yeah.
you're for them like a role model. That's why I'm asking, because I think it's important to share our experience so we can also inspire a new generation of women in technology.
I think that's what is very exciting about the WomenTech network, how global it is. Like the first time I spoke at your conference, like I was talking to women from all over the world, and I was like, oh, this is so exciting. I was like really, really excited. And I think there are different paths to come to US if you're in another country. My suggestion kind of based on the current situation, even that's a little tricky, but I would say the universities here, like I went to grad school much later in my career, but the most common path that people choose is if they have a technology degree, or for that matter, even other degrees, they they would come here for a master's, and once they
Right.
finish their master's, then they will find a job. Because it's not coming to another country, it's not just finding a job, it's like cultural assimilation, understanding how things work here. Even if you have years of experience, which I necessarily didn't, working in another country, that's not always transferable so directly. And there are so many things to learn. For like maybe like language is a barrier for some other people. Like in India, we speak English a lot, but some other country language might be a barrier. So like grad school gives you a good learning opportunity, not just to up your tech skills, but like all kind of life skills that provides you opportunity, prepares you to go into a real workplace and work. So I think
Right.
grad school path in US is always solid. Yeah.
That's a really good idea to everyone who is listening to us and maybe also is considering to go to work in the US. I think that sounds really reasonable and would get easier integrated in the society in general, since there will be definitely different cultural differences. Absolutely, as you said, Rachana. You have been working with Etsy for already more than 6 years. How did you start your journey there, and how did you grow professionally into the role of VP of engineering, which is super exciting? And how is this role different from the previous role of senior director of engineering that you had?
Yeah, all good questions. Kind of how I landed at Etsy is a little bit of a long story. As I was mentioning before, I went to grad school after I worked for like 8-9 years. I went to Columbia University here in New York, and my intention while I was going into Columbia was to I always knew I wanted to do something related to technology. As we already discussed, it's like a superpower which can be applied to any industry. So one of the things I was thinking of is like either using technology, like either in the more deeply in the nonprofit sector, because I worked for a nonprofit couple of years before I went to Columbia, or to go to United Nations or some other large international development organization like that, but work on like things specific to technology. And while I was at grad school, I did like a couple of consulting projects with the UN, and I also like was exploring different opportunities. As I said, like that's the good thing about going to grad school. Even with years of experience, I found it opens you up to spaces that you have never even thought of before, and opportunities you've never even thought of before. So while I was doing that, someone whom I work with currently, my friend Phoebe, who I work with at Etsy right now, she was working at Columbia University then, and she suggested like Etsy might be a good fit because I was very clear that I wanted to work with something that was very mission driven. that where the social impact is really clear. Of course, every company believes like, you know, they are serving the bigger good or they have a mission. But for me, it has to be things I care about, right? Like
Right.
you can be helping the world in so many different ways. And what really attracted me to Etsy at that given point in time, and still that's the reason I'm still there as well, as we help serve like entrepreneurs all over the world who are like small businesses and entrepreneurs, and predominantly most of them, over 85% of them, are all women. So for me, the ability to take like women's talents and making skills and help them turn that into a business and provide a global buyer base was like really, really exciting. And besides that, like from sustainability to diversity, all the different areas that I care about, like Etsy was one of the few tech companies that was doing really well, but it was a much smaller company then. And the culture also seemed a lot of fun. It was a small company which was growing rapidly. So that's how I kind of ended up at Etsy. I started as an engineering manager there. So yeah, the second part of your question was like, how is my current job different from my
Right,
previous
right.
jobs? Before I answer that, do you have anything else for what I just said?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's super interesting that you're sharing about, being mission driven. And I just thought, well, for me, like many things that you said. First thing that it sounds like Etsy is focusing on female empowerment, empowering female entrepreneurs, right? Especially in the times of crisis. I think it's super important because many of them, like, they need to live from something, and that could be one of the main, let's say, main chains of their income.
Yeah.
This is super. I think this is so needed. That's one thing. Another thing that you said, that like you wanted to work in a mission driven organization. Maybe for everyone who is like on the way to choose their company, or who is looking
Yeah.
for actually changing and working for like impact driven company organization, how to pick, like, what are the factors, maybe what are the questions that you need to ask the hiring manager, how to be how can you best ensure that you ask the right question when choosing a company that you want to work for?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I also want to acknowledge that we're all over the world in a really tough economy now. So like the luxury to choose might not always exist for everyone. Like it's not always necessarily existed for me, but like at that given point in time, there was the privilege and the luxury to choose. So when you have that, I in general think of interviewing absolutely as a two-way process. It's like I feel like most candidates who come into interview, they think, oh, they're asking me the questions, I have to prepare as much as possible and go. But in general, at least as a hiring manager, and I have seen this from a lot of other leaders, they also want people, hopefully on their teams, who can ask them hard questions, who are thoughtful,
True.
because you're mostly only as good as your team is. And the way you can get better is like you have a team who can think critically, who can ask you hard questions. And so if you're going for an interview, a few things I would look for, right? It's one is like, as I said, the core of the business, the customers they're trying to serve, and the problem they're trying to solve. Does that excite you, and does that align with your own values? Because like what the things I care about and my personal values might be very different from somebody else's. So it's first of all like introspecting and understanding what are the causes that you care about and what excites you. For somebody else, it might be education. It might not be women entrepreneurship. And like there are so many education tech related spaces. So like that's just the example I gave. Once you have clarity on that, a way to know, at least in a tech product driven organization, that they really care about customers is a few questions you can ask about, like how do they do research? How do they understand their customer needs? How do they bring that both quantitative and qualitative data that they have? How do they bring that back into their work on a day-to-day basis? And it's also like kind of for me, this is important, but like, how do they think about diversity? Does the team, the whole group, basically look exactly the same? And does that mirror some of the customers? Like, the reason I'm saying that is if, as a company at Etsy, if all of our employees were predominantly male, whereas if our buyer and seller base is predominantly female, it's like, of course, you can do a lot of research and everyone can understand each other.
Yeah, yeah.
But like,
But still,
are you like you're serving this customer base? Does your own team look anything like your customer base? Otherwise, how are you going to have any customer empathy or
yeah.
understanding? And do they care about having, as I said, are they open to people who are critical thinking? Do they care about different people's opinion? And also, like, I also talked to a lot of people who work there, try to, it's a lot of work, right? When you interview, of course, in the interview, no one is going to be like, oh, I think the company culture sucks. No one's going to say that. But also, like,
But you can observe, right, and say like see how the rest, for example, the hiring managers are like
yeah,
checking the company website. I feel like because I mean also like hire people, and I feel that very often
yeah,
many people they don't do research well enough, right? To
yeah,
ask these good questions, to ask these hard questions,
yeah,
and then to make sure that you have a clear understanding what is this company doing, what is their mission, no matter big or small,
yeah.
right? And how it aligns with your own values.
Yeah, and if they're a public company, they publish their financials, they publish a lot of numbers, and like, there's
Right.
a lot of public information you can take. When I joined, Etsy was not a public company. We, at that given point in time, we were still like a growing startup, but like we were a B Corp. B Corp is in the US is something, it's called like big corporation where you would get certified that you are hitting a lot of goals in terms of sustainability, diversity, and few other things like that. I read the full report there. Then I also got in touch with my network. I spoke to a couple of people who are working there and asked them how their day-to-day looks like. One of the things that's important to me is also like some amount of decent amount of, like, you're not expected to physically be in the office all the time, right? Like if people have a life outside work as well, so
True.
those kind of things, asking those hard questions and trying to connect are some ways you can understand what's happening there. Yeah.
Yeah. You just touched one point that I wanted also to dwell upon is that when Etsy actually moved from being a private company to a
Yeah.
public company, how did your life change? What was your role during that time, and how did you maybe which techniques you used to navigate the change and to make sure to lead the change,
Yeah.
and what were some of the challenges that you had during that time?
Yeah, those are all good questions. I think as a rapidly growing company, like if when I joined, just as an example, there were, I think, less than 100 engineers at Etsy. We have over 600 engineers now. So every year we have been growing a lot, right? And just with hyper growth, both in terms of business and people, like every year ends up looking a little different. So specifically touching on like going public part, it's, of course, I think it's important that some of the things change from a startup. The culture in a startup is a little different, but as when once you start taking public's money, so you're accountable for a lot more things. So for me, like some of the biggest things that I learned, I was like a senior manager, then became a director, senior director, now VP. So I've managed all different shape and forms of the organization, and I have seen it grow. It was basically to always be open to change. I think is the one of the most important things I learned in the whole process. And I can answer more tactically how to kind of lead through that. I think the challenge sometimes people have is like, people love, like, as human beings, we love to be nostalgic. Like, when it was like this, it was so great. But the reality is, like, it's like if we, in middle of a pandemic, if I said, oh, I went and ate in restaurants all the time, or like did traveled in airplanes all the time, I missed that. But things have changed, and a lot of things are outside your control. And like I feel, especially in a workplace, as long as things are changing for the better, for the new phase, and the core value and the mission is the same, like you need to learn to adapt very quickly. I think it's good fun to be nostalgic, but it's also important to know when to move on and accept the new reality. So one is like having a very open mind to change, and as a leader, not ever being comfortable with like this is how I run things, this is how I do things, and this is how it will work. Because when things are changing rapidly, it's constantly about looking at your process, looking from your hiring practices to how you run your team meetings to how you track things. For example, when we were a much smaller private company, the amount of like emphasis we had on our business numbers and goals and KPIs was much lesser because organically we were growing so much. Once you're accountable to public and you have to talk about your financial results every quarter, you have to track it much more closely. You have to see if you're hitting your goals on a monthly basis. So a lot of these things change, but I also think that they're all great learning opportunities. Yeah.
Right. So to see these challenges as opportunities and to be open to change,
Yeah.
because there's no things like everything will be static and same all the time, right?
Yeah.
So to have the growth mindset,
Yeah.
right?
And also, I
Mm.
think one great way to grow in a growing company, irrespective of whether you're in leadership or not, when things change rapidly and you're growing rapidly, there's always like gaps, like someone who can identify like patterns and gaps that so nobody else is like kind of noticing and caring for, and proactively working on making it better and filling those gaps, I think is always like what helps people be successful.
True. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the situation caused by COVID because it forced many companies and many teams to work completely remotely and other
Yeah.
things to change. So, how did your life change during this time, and what were some of the important decisions you had to make to lead the change?
Yeah. I think to begin with, like everyone literally all over the world were trying to figure out what the hell is happening, right? I think Americans and
Yeah,
Indians are still
yeah,
trying
yeah,
to figure out what's happening. But as
true.
someone who lives in the greater New York City area, we were one of the first really hard hit cities. This was like right in April. And so a lot was changing very quickly, and it was certainly challenging. From like, I can start from a personal point of view, and then kind of talk about as a leader, like some of the things I did and Etsy as a company did to help navigate through that situation. So, like, first of all, like I keep joking, like the as with two working parents and no immediate family around us, the amount of support that was there for in my personal space, from help in childcare to help in like a lot of things to run the house, made me like gave me the time and space to also be successful in my career, right? It's like I think if people say I do everything on my own, I think it's almost impossible. Like I had a lot of support, and like overnight no one could go anywhere, but the work was kind of the same, and there was no childcare and two working parents at home. So how do we even work to begin with during the day was something like it took us some time to figure out. And like my husband and I had to figure out, like, should we do schedules? Will you take care of the child for some time? Then I will, but you can't go anywhere, and neither can anyone come into the house. So just figuring out the personal
Right.
situation of like how to work and all. Like it's like having three jobs then. You're like cooking 3 meals a day, you're taking care of a child, and you're like also working full time, even though like you're sharing responsibilities with your partner at home, but it's still a lot
Yeah.
of,
And you stay at home on top of that,
yeah.
right?
And as a leader, you're also not responsible for, I think like all leaders should be, for like engagement and well-being of your team. Like there are over 100 people in my group, and it's also important that I'm present for them, and I'm emotionally also available to those people, right? Because everyone is trying to figure out, you have your responsibility both in your personal and professional space. And in the past, whenever at work, I felt like things were going crazy, and I needed more help at home, I would ask like my mom or my mother-in-law or my sister. They all literally live in the other part of the globe, to either like plan something for me or come here or something like that. None of that even existed because we are kind of, are all left on our own. So it was a struggle to figure out things personally. But on the professional side, I would say I feel really, really grateful to work for a company that is highly empathetic to working parents and in general very flexible for everyone. Right from the beginning, our executive team and even the leadership team, including me, were very like transparent that we understand like this is not normal, we don't, and there is a lot of flexibility. Just like communicate that very, very clearly to your team. Like once if you figure out that you can't work till like 12 o'clock that day, you can work starting after 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Like communicate that to your team, add that on your calendar. So even now we continue to roll out a lot of like different ways of flexibility, from like leave to parental leave to like providing more childcare support to reimbursing some costs for like online classes for kids. So that way, like Etsy as a company is very, very supportive. And one good thing we also did was we were, I think, one of the first like big offices in New York to completely go remote, and we started testing that fairly early. And we also saw, like some people had their laptop and their full work setup. Of course, everyone has a laptop, but a lot of people didn't have a work support, like from having a chair to a monitor and all these.
Yeah, it's not just about laptop and doing something for an hour, right? It's about like working well and comfortably and having a back support, like different factors, right? Different things.
And we immediately started providing support for all those things. And we also, as leadership team, started doing check-ins more often. In the first few weeks of COVID, when we didn't know what was happening, our CEO would talk to the company at least once in 2 weeks, address things directly with them, trying to figure out things collectively. And I have, as I said, I feel really thankful. If I say like I need a mental day off, or somebody else says that on my team, we are just very exhausted with whatever is happening. Because one is like trying to get work done, but also all the world events that are happening. Somebody in your family might be sick, or your extended family might be sick, like processing everything that's happening. So I think besides like expensing basic things like expensing all the office related work equipment, it's also forming employee resource groups to support that, and managers being available, providing a lot of flexibility. I think these are some of the things Etsy's tried to do, and I'm certainly on my team. Like I'm hoping like there's a culture, like if people need to take time off or they have other responsibilities, they all communicate about it very openly.
Yeah, you're still working remotely, right?
Remote. And of course, like kids coming into meetings and talking in between and all those things has become like very accepted norm now, because like where are they going to go? So, but it's also kind of fun, like in between a boring meeting to see a baby is kind of fun too.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, I like when you say like in your bio on LinkedIn, you stated like doing the impactful work but also still having fun, right? And I think that's one of the important components of enjoying the work, regardless of which stage you are at, is actually having fun, right?
If my son interrupts a meeting now, we all do video conferences, so he picks up, I give him a notepad and a paper. He picks a person and he keeps drawing them. So now, like my coworkers have their portraits drawn by my son. So it's like it's kind of after the meeting, I send them pictures. See, look, he drew you today. So which I think is fun.
Yeah, this is cute. Another thing I wanted to talk about, as you're a leader, is female leadership different from male leadership in your opinion? And what unique maybe women leaders bring to the table? What unique things?
Yeah, I think that's a really good and interesting question. The way I think about this in general is like based on who you are and like societal constructs around it, right? Like society, the minute you're born, whether it's a baby boy or a baby girl, starts differentiating. And then there are so many other things where your life experiences might be very different from your teammates based on like gender is a predominant one, as I said, but it can also be based on many other things because the society judges you differently. And it's like based on religion, based on race, based on class, and based on geographic location. All these things adds to kind of your life experience, adds to what you are as a leader. And of course, there's a difference because of that. One predominant one is gender, so that's where I think there's a difference between sometimes male and female leaders. But there's also, that's why diversity is so important on teams, which is not just gender diversity, based on based on ethnicity, diversity, and all these things are really important because like then you have a difference of opinion. Like diversity of thought is what I was getting to. Then you have diversity of thought, right? And diversity of like thought, I think, makes product so much better and customer experience so much better. Then you're trying to not only cater to customers like you're trying to cater to customers at large. So that's how even leadership differs. And to answer your question, like, is it different? I think it is different in some ways, like based on, again, your background in general. But I think traditionally a lot of like male form of leadership, that you're always like poker face, like perfectly put together, and nothing can like shake you. This alpha male stereotype of what a leader should be, I think hurts company culture at large. I'm not saying that kind of leadership is also great, but what I'm trying to get is like that shouldn't be the only form of leadership. And I think maybe I discussed this when we were talking at WomenTech Network conference last time, was also like women are more expressive, they're more vulnerable about like their feelings and thoughts. And I think that kind of leadership is also important. There are different forms of leadership where you can complement each other. For example, if one of my coworkers is more always very like more like closed, and they might be an introvert. That's what I said, like it can be a different personality, and they don't open up as much. I might be a person who talks more about my feelings and very transparent about my thoughts. I think we can complement each other and work very well together. So women are more empathetic and vulnerable, and I think that adds a great dimension to leadership. And especially at times of crisis, like if you even look at a lot of countries, which I think have done quite well during COVID, Taiwan to New Zealand and a few other countries, I feel like they have women leaders as like the head of country, and their leadership style is very different. And during times of crisis, sometimes that kind of leadership also might be better. So, which is again my personal opinion. I might be wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think the situation is in general changing, like from what was before we had like fewer women leaders, and now the situation is getting better also like in technology? And do you see many VP of engineering in different companies, or how is it?
Yeah. I don't see as many as I would like to. That's the honest answer. I feel like every then and now it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards is what keeps happening in diversity and technology space. Like I could be in my own bubble. At least executive team, it's like there are more women than men, and it's one of the very few tech companies where there is gender equality on the board, and there are more women on the executive team. But having said that, I'm the only female VP of engineering at Etsy, right? So even in a company like this, it's still like there's not as much representation especially in engineering, and there's still a lot of work to do. But I think honestly, when I entered the industry, which was like a while ago, no one even talked about lack of gender diversity. Like my first 5 years, I saw that, and even if I felt really bad about it, I felt like no one was talking about it, and that in turn made it not okay for me to talk about it, even if I felt that way. That we need to do something to improve the situation. And because you didn't want to be the person, I think it shouldn't be on the underrepresented person to improve it. I feel like the more like leaders talk about it, for example, my peers who are all men and my boss, they're always thinking and talking about diversity. And I think they should do that more, because as the underrepresented person, it shouldn't be my sole responsibility, right? So I feel like there's so much consciousness and talk about it. So I feel hopeful about it, but are we doing great? The answer is absolutely not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I like what you're sharing about the hope, and I truly believe that the more we share about it, the more we organize different events where we raise awareness, and the more we invite role models like you, because I believe you're really a good role model for great role model for many women who want to reach the basically many women actually are being stuck, in the middle of their career, and like they're not reaching this leadership position. So I was thinking of asking an advice from you.
Yeah.
Maybe you can share some things that helped you to grow into the role where you are now. And did you have any blockers in general, or did you get like promoted frequently? How was your path?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I have thought about it as well. It's a combination of few things, right? It's as I said, like I think Etsy was a place where I really truly enjoyed like my work and the team. And I did get from like it was also a hyper growth company. And if you're a top performer in a hyper growth company, you can get more and more responsibilities and grow fairly quickly. That doesn't, it's also a combination of are you at the right place at the right time. But I would say few things are, one is to begin with, like you need to have at least if you choose to have kids, if you choose to have family, it's again absolutely a choice. You can have a great life without any of that also, but if you choose to do those things, to begin with, to have a supportive partner and to have a supportive family, because how much ever you think those two things are separate, it's very hard to make it separate. And I really think a lot of like my from my parents to even my in-laws, my sister, my husband. My husband is a true partner in terms of taking care of the child and those things. So having a supportive space at home where like they're there to cover a lot of things in your personal space, I think is really helpful just for like a decent amount of peace of mind. But also, as I said, like I don't shy away from saying like I hire a lot of help so that when I have free time, I'm just spending it with my family, and I don't have to. And again, that's again a luxury. In the beginning of your career, you might not have that luxury as well, and so like kind of doing the trade-off of I come here as an immigrant with absolutely no financial backing, so it was a lot of trade-off of like if I spend so much money right now, will it be you know ROI positive in the long term for my career is a question you kind of need to ask, and everybody's situation is different, and even to able to afford help is like a privilege. So after that, in the professional space, I would say seeking having people at work. I don't mean just like work friendships to hang out, but like people who are genuinely both within your workspace and larger in the industry, who could be your mentors and who you could have honest conversations with. You have to be yourself driven. Like it's not like the path is always like going to be like, once you're driven, it will work out on your own. There will be blockers, right? And there will be like big life changes or changes even within the organization. It won't always be like straight and smooth or just like up like this either. So I think at Etsy, like I've had like long-term friends slash mentors whom I feel like I can go to with any career questions, or if I have a dilemma. And I have like a solid group of women, both friends, mom friends whom I can talk to about parenting, to like the same, it can also get mixed up with like friends from grad school, other women leader friends who I feel like whenever, oh my God, I can't do this, I have a group to vent and they can solid advice as well. So, and then the last suggestion I would have is like if you're ambitious and you want to grow, I think if you're happy doing not even like grow doing like certain level for a few years after having a child or something, I think that's completely fine too. It's like whatever personally makes you happy. So I would say the last one would be open to taking risks. Like if there's a challenge at work where no one wants to touch it because they think it's not going to work, like I feel like I always feel attracted to those things because like people will think like this is not going to work, so it's not, no one wants to kind of try it. I always think it's something new, but why do we think it's not going to work? Let's at least give our best. So I think I have a decent amount of appetite for risk, and I'm okay with failure. So I think combination of these things.
Yeah, that sounds like you touch different fields like family, like having a decent network professionally and personally, and being actually like being not a failure. I think that's one of the most important ingredients to the success, right? Try, fail, try again, fail again, try better, do better next time. That sounds really cool. We have a couple of questions that people asked us. One of the questions is like from Pari. She's asking how many years of your life you spent in India.
Yeah, sure. I came here when I was 21, 22, so I was in India before that. Yeah.
Probably Pari is also thinking of relocating and starting her career. Another question from Allison: is Etsy planning to stay remote? If you know, if Etsy is planning to stay remote or remote optional, or return to the offices when it's safe to do so?
Yeah, I think it will be a combination of all the things, is what I'm guessing. We're still trying to figure it out like everybody else. But I think it will be, we've always been a very remote friendly company, to be clear. My team, even before the pandemic, even last year, had over 20% of engineers who were remote across the US. So we've always been a very remote friendly culture, and we've had remote engineers. So I would say it would be a combination of remote, like some people in office, some people who are partially remote. I'm guessing like most companies, especially the ones who can afford to work remotely, up to a certain extent, have to be open to all the different options. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we'll live and we'll see, because I'd say many companies, well, it's still not clear, right? Some people predict there is going to be a second wave. Some people like say we probably will be comfortable. So I think that in the future we will see and adapt on the go. I wanted also to ask you regarding the thing, since we talked also, you talked about family and responsibilities, having supportive partner. So my question is, do you believe there is such thing as a work-life balance? And if yes, how we can achieve it? And if no.
Yeah, I always keep thinking, like, I feel like we should ask more of this question to male leaders as well. Like, I'm curious to think like what male leaders think about work-life balance, right? So,
okay, I will ask a male leader this question. Yeah, I think it's a good point.
Yeah.
And I understand why you're telling this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I don't know like what a perfect like work-life balance looks like. I think it's kind of like month to month, day to day. It looks differently, right? It's some days are great days where you feel like you accomplished a lot at work. You had really quality time with family. Some days are like you have like a 14-hour work day, and some days it's like you're finding it very challenging to focus and work. So I would say like it's hard to say. It also really depends on what age kids are, what phase you are in. So I would say currently I feel like I've figured out over time what a decent, at least personally for me, work-life balance looks like. Like what I mean by that was like when my son was born, like we had no idea what we were doing. And it's like so hard to figure out what like newborns. So it was in general very challenging. Of course, my mom was there, so that was helpful. But like my husband and I, like it took us a while to even figure out how to divide like chores and childcare work. And it was not even like super smooth. Like one day we woke up and we knew everything. It was a lot of arguing and eventually figuring it out. And now that my son's older, he's almost like he's 4.5, 5. And so it's like a much easier age, like where you can have a conversation, even though they're not always rational. Like you can still have a conversation, and a lot. And I have one. A lot of people have many kids, so I'm like fully impressed with them. I don't even know how they do that. But one of the things I have figured out is like on when people used to work in physical offices, now we get to spend a lot more time with him. On weekdays, I would like, if there was something to, a networking event or a public speaking event like this, I would try to only keep everything Monday to Thursday. And anything I do, like from Friday evening onwards till Monday morning, like I was very sure, like I had to take my son everywhere I go. It's like meeting a friend or traveling, or, it's one of the things I love. It's like, what are you willing to give up is kind of what I think. And that applies to different times in life, right? Like I almost very rarely do like socializing which doesn't involve other kids on weekend. And but like I really enjoy traveling. So one of the things I kind of started doing from early on was like getting my son used to traveling. Sometimes even if my husband couldn't join us, like once when my son was like 1 year old, I met my sister in Italy, and it was hard to travel alone from US to Italy with a child. Yeah, the good thing was my sister had arranged everything there. I didn't have to go and figure out anything. So that's the good thing about having, like, that's what I meant by support network. Like, it's not just like, even like they know you enjoy traveling, so they've arranged everything for you. You don't have to figure out logistic. But like my son was jet lagged, and it was not the normal usual vacation mode, but it was like a different way of traveling, which you get used to very quickly. And you can't do some other things which you used to do before, and I think that's totally fine, because like you're doing so many new things, seeing the world through the eyes of a child and learning so many things with them and through them, which I think is also very exciting.
Yeah. My daughter is 10 months old. So I know what you're talking about. I also been traveling when she was younger and when the situation was better. So yeah, and we're coming to this point when you said also about being open to change in your job, and I think it's the same in your life, right? Being open to change and figure out things on the go. Here is one more question: is if you know, does Etsy hire for entry-level developer, such as career changers coming from boot camps? If so, what advice do you have for those hoping to apply, like myself?
That's a good question. We do hire entry-level developers, and we do hire people from boot camps. We have actually a lot of people from boot camps and very successful engineers from boot camps. I honestly think very good talent can come from either of those spaces. Like I went to like full 4-year engineering school, but I've seen very, very smart, very successful developers who have come from boot camps. So the best way to apply is go to etsy.com/careers page, and usually we have, I can double check if we still have it. I think this September, October is also the season we start hiring new grads. So we'll usually have a job posting for a new grad there, and that's the one, like new college graduate, and that's the one you would apply for.
All right, thank you. One final message for everyone who is listening to us or will watch this later. Maybe one thing that you would advise your younger self, or one message that you would like to share with our global audience, different, like for those who are starting their career, in the middle of their career, like seniors. One final message from you, several messages, maybe 3 messages.
Okay, let's start with if you're beginning your career. I would say if you're beginning your career, like there is no such thing as a perfect first job. Like I speak to a lot of people who are graduating from college, graduating from grad school, and they're like, should I like take a job that's focused on data science because that's the up and coming field? I'm like, yeah, that would be great if that's what your interest is. But are some people, it's like people would be like, if I enter finance, can I then switch to something else? Or like, I feel like you can get so obsessed about like your first job has to be like perfect. I would kind of think of as like, choose a first job which will give you the best learning opportunity. And also, like, given that we are in a tough economic situation, I would say as long as like you feel like you'll be happy and the culture is good and there is a learning opportunity, any job you're going to learn either ways, that is open to a learning culture. One thing is to have the learning opportunity, but some of the companies I have seen, it's like they don't create structures for new people to learn. So that's something I would look for. And then there is nothing called the perfect job. Like, as long you can switch industries, you can switch programming languages, you can switch job profiles, you can do so many things later on in life. So don't be too obsessed about like finding the perfect thing. If you're somewhere middle of the career, I would say I'll go back to the risk-taking part of things. If there is an assignment in another country, or if there's a new business line which seems challenging, and also if you have or another geographic location, if you have the opportunity to like have a traveling job, or even like kind of do something completely outside your comfort zone, I would say like middle of the career is in general great to kind of switch things up. If you're interested in management, that's a good time to start thinking about it as well. Do you want to switch to management? And with their experience, I feel like they already know it. And they can give me advice maybe. If they're further along in their career, I would say like always having a learning mindset. I never feel like I've learned everything that's there for my job and I can just be successful this way. I always feel nervous about this. So many new technologies and so many new things happening, and like a little bit of like I don't know how to do XYZ part of my job too well. And I think that's having that learning mindset, irrespective of even if you're like successful in your career and pretty senior, I think it's helpful.
Yeah, regardless of how many years of experience you have, it's good to have this growth mindset and this learning mindset where you will be open to change and will be open to grow professionally, as you said. So thank you very much, Rachana. It was super interesting, and thanks for your time. Lots of very useful insights. Thanks for sharing your experience. You made it sound like so easy, but I can believe it was like really hard at different stages of your life, because to grow to the role where you are at. So thanks a lot for sharing some really cool tips, some techniques that you personally used. People are thanking you also in the chat, and we are looking forward to having you at our other events. It would be great to talk to you again. Have a great day, and everyone who is joining us at Hopin, and Rachana also, you can do it too, to go to the networking area and benefit from one-on-one networking.
That sounds
so
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had a great time chatting with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye, Rachana. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And I hope you had a great time. Thank you, everyone who is writing us in the chat. Very helpful. Thank you very much. Thanks for your feedback. For me personally, it was super interesting to have a conversation with Rachana today. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for being active and sharing when something resonated with you. And I wanted to let you know that you can find also lots of inspiration on our blog on WomenTech Network. We have a YouTube channel where you can watch also other inspiring talks. And we will be seeing each other in 2 weeks. We are going to have another interesting fireside chat with Yaliva Soko. She was one of our keynote speakers at WomenTech Global Conference 2020. We will be talking about global citizenship and what it actually means and how you can be part of it. So join us, same time, same place. Wishing you a great day, evening, morning, wherever you are, and join everyone, as I said, who is on Hopin, can join for one-on-one networking. Thank you for your time, and see you online.